And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live here Friday, July 7th, third hour Friday. It's time for What Just Happened. As we look back at the insanity of the week, we're joined by two returning champions and a new person. We'll start with the new person. V Spehar is joining us, an LGBTQIA podcaster, online personality, citizen journalist with over 3 million followers on TikTok from the channel Under the Desk News. V, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Dean.
Can I have like a 5,000 followers? I just want a few. I don't like can you loan them? Is there a way to bequeath them or something? All right.
Yes, I'll stitch you. It'll boost you.
I could use any help. Carolina Hidalgo is back, comedian, podcaster, host of No Dogs in Space and the Last Podcast Network, probably other podcasts I don't know about. Carolina, welcome back. Are there other podcasts that I've missed?
Actually, that's the only one for now, because I'm in California, so we just do the one thing at a time.
They only allow one podcast at a time in California. That's the way Governor Newsom runs it. And Kevin Dombrowski is back. Comedian, host of the podcast Just Joking, tours the nation, performing comedy. And do you have a new album coming out? I can't remember.
I do. Yes, I do. It's called I'm Being Lazy in the Editing Process.
That's what it's actually called. That's the working title.
No, it's the working title is Stay at Home Kevin, and it should be out. It should hopefully be out end of summer
or before the time for the next pandemic. So
right. Well, I have to hedge my bets and make sure I have a new hour before the old one comes out.
All right. So let's talk about a lot of news, a lot of things, some bigger, some smaller. I was off last week, so I didn't get to do what just happened on those Supreme Court decisions that were horrible. We had one legalizing discrimination against the LGBTQ community, the other striking down affirmative action for colleges, and a third one reversing or striking down President Biden's student debt cancellation program. This is not good at all. So V, let's start with you. It's the first time on the show. What's your reaction to this bucket of horrendousness that the Supreme Court has served up for us?
So I think we need to recognize that the Supreme Court is doing the job that Congress is supposed to be doing in many cases. And we know this because a lot of the right and a lot of the Federalist Society and more conservative commentators are bragging about it. They're saying, well, we got the court, so we're going to get whatever we want forever, even if it can't pass Congress. So I think that's where we need to be keeping our eye when it comes to politics is the court operating independently and judiciously, or are they maybe bought by certain investors of theirs that are trying to skirt away the way things are supposed to pass through?
Certainly. Harlan Crow is an investor who's invested a lot in Justice Thomas. I'm sure he got a bonus after these decisions. Kevin, would you like a billionaire to wine and dine you and take you on vacations and buy your mom a house and stuff like that, like Harlan Crow's done for Justice Thomas? And here's the best part. He doesn't ask for anything in return. At least that's what we're told, right? So
Sure. I would love to recreate Pretty Woman. Let's reboot it for the modern society.
Right.
Let's have it be Pretty Man. And I would say I'll go wherever the money is.
You think that's a very funny concept, the idea of just Clarence Thomas walking on the street and there's Harlan Crow in like a Maserati and drives up and says, hey, you want to come with me? And
sure.
The whole world is so I mean,
and his only rule is don't kiss me on the mouth.
That's it. So Kevin, any reaction to the Supreme Court decisions last week? I mean, you have a child, right?
Yes.
And your child is white. So this affirmative action thing actually helped your child. So what's your reaction? Do you have a
Sure, Dean. This is the opportunity we've been waiting on for the past 25 years. This is truly the only way my daughter's going to get into college. I don't know that I have a reaction because this is also the first time I'm hearing about it. I know usually I'm up on. I'm gonna be like Trump. Wow, that just happened. I'm just learning this right now. Can you, Matt? Can you play Tiny Dancer in the background while I say the ruling lived an incredible life?
So you've got all right. So there is a Supreme Court. Let's take a big step back.
Sure.
Okay, you got that. So then we bring it up. They make decisions. They made 3 really bad ones last week. So
yes.
let's go to the box on the left. Carolina Hidalgo. Carolina, I mean, the Supreme Court, like the one big one, legalizing discrimination against the LGBTQ community is horrific. Like the court for the modern era has reversed the bad stuff from the past, like justifying Jim Crow, moving forward with people having the right for reproductive freedom. But I guess we shouldn't be surprised. It's the same court that overturned Roe v. Wade last year. So they're just taking us back to the good old days of 1963, apparently.
Yeah, apparently, because what it seems to be, and what we should have noticed, I guess, many years ago, which I know I was screaming about this a long time ago on your show, Dean, is the fact that we were focusing so much on the executive that we should have really thought about more about the legislative, because that is what V was talking about. It's the courts that not that matter, but the courts that's really leading us down this path. And because of that, Roe v. Wade and all this like total crap, the LGBTQ rights, like, to me, it not only infuriates me, of course, but it also is because that is not the will of the people. So the whole thing of how these, like the GOP, the Freedom Caucus, using democracy to go against democracy is almost like a really sad and funny joke. And that's where we are right now.
Do you think this is
Uh-oh,
so?
here
This
it
is weird to
comes.
me. No, stop.
Oh, no.
I'll
Okay.
save the dick joke for the next topic.
Okay.
Do you think, I mean, politics is really all about the pendulum swinging back and forth. When we look at politics as a whole, it's whoever the leader is, they try to flip the the House and the Senate to the opposite to kind of play some sort of political ping pong back and forth. Do you think this is just to be expected, to be honest? Because it's like we went from a Republican president to a Democratic president, and then we went from a Democratic majority to a Republican majority. It's just kind of what happens in politics. And if anything, I think this just speaks to like how crazy the system is like it's really hard to get stuff done because it's always whatever way the leader's going, the opposite follows in tow. So it's like maybe instead of being like, well, this is really bad for this, how do we reverse this? Why don't we look for just a new way of doing it as a whole? So it's like
And
you can
what would
actually get some
recommend?
work done.
Like, would there be a
Kevin, you're
physical
not
cha-
proposing the Great Reset, are you? Because that's a whole other horrible idea.
Do
Good.
you want-
I'm
I mean,
glad
would you
that you
like-
guys
Down.
actually. I'm glad you guys picked that up. I want
Kevin-
credit scores. I want.
Yeah.
So Kevin, what would you recommend to solve the issues? Would it be a physical challenge involved? Will there be some kind of combat?
Well,
Like
look,
something
I
with a
don't
horse
think
and riding?
I don't think we've had any president be able to pass a physical challenge in quite some time. I like how New Zealand does it. I like how they have
How?
two leaders of opposite parties, and then they have it out in a bipartisan way, and then come at some sort of agreement. It's like as a marriage, you can't have two angry people and you can't have two laid back people. You got to have one angry person, one laid back person. We know which one I am. You don't have to say it, Dean. And
Right.
that
And your
way,
wife is calling it.
that's right. She's actually banging the door. That's why I have the background blurred. It's and then you come up with ways of like, here's my side, here's your side, and then you have a healthy way moving forward. That's what's missing from politics.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. But I
Well,
like
yeah,
it.
there's no good faith involved. So that
Well, sure. I also want Dean to have a show.
I'm
all
on the
want
left,
these
right? So I'm
shows.
on the left. So I don't want people to get together, right? If everyone got together, I'm gone. There's no more need for a left-wing channel. V, let me ask you, as someone who's a member of the LGBTQIA community, what is your reaction to the Supreme Court legally? I mean, ushering in discrimination, and it's the starting point. And I think a lot of us fear it's going to expand even further in terms of allowing discrimination against same-sex couples or just people who are in the LGBTQ community for any reason, and they can justify it under it's freedom of expression, or it's I'm making something special with this hamburger, so you don't have a right to sit in my restaurant.
Right. It's artistic catch-up.
Right.
What I think is, if we go back to what is really happening now, and to Kevin's point, everything that's happening now is in reaction to what happened before. And I think this is a good lesson for us on term limits and on why we shouldn't have billionaires, because when money can buy you power to the level that it can in our day and age, and when you have old people that want to maintain control and are sitting on their Senate and congressional seats, and their entire purpose seemingly is to just work on being reelected and sort of like hold this line of keeping problems going so that they always have something that they're solving. That's where we're getting into trouble, because a lot of the laws that got passed to bring us to a really progressive point were in reaction to the civil rights movement. And so we saw all of this great progress. A lot of those same people, Joe Biden included, are still in power. And so now we're seeing them sort of undo all the things that they were pissed about in their 20s in their 80s. And so I think, there's some sort of like, my mother calls it the death rattle of politics, where it's like, she seems to think that this is sort of like big final hurrah, but eventually when the dust settles, it is going to settle in a more progressive place, because when you look at the American outlook on things like abortion access, LGBTQ equality, even trans kids in sports and whatnot, the vast majority of people are like, let people just live. Like, we're not bothered by this. We're not as xenophobic, bigoted, or hateful as we were in past generations. And it's not gonna be something that I think they thought with having all the courts, well, the courts are going to decide and that's going to be the end of it. And it's like, no, the courts decided, and people are more energized against this attack on democracy than they've ever been. And so I think these folks who think that they like did it are in for a big surprise when they see, especially Gen Z, who is so young and so smart, coming for you in your 80s and 90s with your horrible ideas.
I believe in Gen Z so much. You have no idea. Like I prop them up, maybe a little too much, but I will do anything. I will support them. I will be their crazy fun aunt.
Yeah,
I think a Hunger Games scenario with Gen Z versus the older people, and then whoever survives at the end, whoever is the cat, what was it? Cat, what was her name? You know,
Katniss out. Yeah,
Katniss. That's how it goes. It's kind of interesting, though. I will say this: I think Gen Z. I've had many Gen Z activists on my show. I've never talked to people, younger people, so many that have been so committed to issues, because it's not political, it's personal, like it's affecting their lives. Like, now you can't have reproductive freedom. Now you get shot in schools and no one's going to do anything about it because Republicans don't care, or climate change, whatever it might be. But
you look at that.
But Paul, I will say one thing. One second, Kevin. I'm actually making a point, Kevin. The point is, sometimes the younger generations, as they get older, polling shows they get more in the center, and they don't become right wing. So some of the Gen Z people are going to become more moderate, but while they're still really progressive, now is the time to amplify them, and hopefully they register and vote in 2024 in numbers we've never seen before. Kevin, what was your amazing point you were going to make there?
Well, thank you for teeing it up like that.
Yes.
What I think is funny is it kind of that generational, let's say, work-mindedness comes from the same reaction that V was talking about with politics, where it's like I think Gen Z is making up for the laziness of millennials and the complaininess of millennials. It's interesting to me because I'm
going to guess that you're Gen X.
No, I think I'm the oldest millennial.
He's that's his new album, The Oldest Millennial.
I think Eliza actually beat me to that. I think that she had an album called The Elder Millennial.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay, sorry.
No, I think that no, that's so funny. I was taught comedy by a lot of Gen Xers that had the same joke about millennials being lazy, but I do think
it's a lazy joke, Kevin. It's a lazy joke to knock out millennials.
Because every generation mocks the generation before them, whatever.
Right, but that's the thing is, I'm not actually knocking them. What I'm saying is, there's this overall generality that millennials just didn't really do anything for themselves, and they just complained about it, and then Gen Z comes along, and it's like not the overcorrecting, but the correcting of that. You have the pendulum swing this way. Instead of talking about it, I'm just going to go out and do it, which is kind of interesting that it's mirroring politics.
Well,
something that we've seen is the fact that millennials are raised by boomers and we're taught to be so don't speak up, don't get out of line. Like spanking was very popular in the 80s and 90s too, that millennials were kind of beat into submission by the boomers who controlled politics and still control politics. Whereas Gen Z is raised by Gen X, and Gen X don't give a shit. Gen X is like, we're here, we're going to burn it all down. Like, this is crazy. Like, our kids aren't going to deal with this kind of stuff. And they didn't sort of like beat them into submission in the same way that the millennial generation was taught to be sort of like domesticated, if you will.
To me, the impressive thing is Gen Z, they do activism while at the same time taking selfies. It's kind of remarkable. They've combined both that skill set. Like, I've never seen a generation more aware of the issues at the same time. They're amazing at self. Like, I was on vacation. It's half of the Gen Zers I saw were like talking about politics, the other half just selfie time. Carolina.
Well, that's because you have to put a background up, and then you got to point to it, and your points come out through the back of your cell phone.
Carolina, are you on TikTok or do you other social media?
No, I quit. I'm only on Instagram. I quit Facebook. I quit Twitter. Your wonderful producer, Matt, was the only person in the whole world that noticed when I quit Twitter. And that was one of the sad realizations of like, oh, it doesn't matter if I just leave, So, I mean, why did I spend so many years, so many hours curating these profiles and stuff for it when I deleted out of, let's say, frustration or white guys.
So you're Instagram. You're on Instagram.
I am on Instagram though, so I'm not.
Well, it's a good time to talk about
homeschooled.
to get out of politics for a second. We'll go back. Is the kickoff this week of Threads, the Twitter killer by Instagram, by Meta, and it is remarkable to me that only Elon Musk can make Mark Zuckerberg appear likable. Like I never liked Mark Zuckerberg, but all of a sudden, like I'm on Team Zuckerberg now because Musk is awful. I mean, he's irredeemable. I've never. Yeah. I thought at first Elon Musk, when he took over Twitter, I thought he was trying to recalibrate it because it was definitely center left. I'm on the left, and I saw it. I'm like, okay, maybe he's trying to welcome back a few on the right. Then he really embraced like the vileness of Twitter, like the vile people. I'm like, nope, this was a mistake by me too. You really went way over there. So is anyone on, Kevin, are you on Threads, the new Instagram? I think you are. No.
Yeah, I just joined last night, and honestly, I don't want to do it, but I waited on TikTok and I saw how much I paid for that career-wise. And I mean, look, all I do is stand up. So normally when these new things come out, I go, they'll be gone in a week. It's like when you work somewhere and a new employee comes in and you're like, give them 2 weeks and then I'll say hi. Let me see if they're still around. So I have the same approach with social media, but last night I joined just to be able to keep my name in case I do want to be active on it.
Interesting. But the fact that it's owned by Meta means it's going to stay around. There's no doubt. I invested so much time in MySpace. It's embarrassing. Because comedy, because I'm not even kidding.
That's the best.
No, because I did comedy. I started comedy. I'm slightly older than you guys, but I started doing comedy in like
1922.
Right, the World War I ended, and I'm like, what can I do now with my free time? I'm like, I know, make people laugh. It was 1998, 97, 98 is when I first started, and MySpace was huge. And then the early 2000s, it was very big when I was doing comedy a great deal of the time. And so we all use it, and now it's just gone. Like I don't even know if it exists, but I think Threads will stick around. And we'll see. What about you, V? What are you on? TikTok, obviously, you have 3 million followers. What else do you use, or is that your primary social media platform to reach people?
TikTok is big. I got on Threads, and I have to tell you, I was like hesitant to say how much I liked it because I like want to gatekeep it because it's so good. Like it's so good. Kevin, I actually think you'll do really, really well on it because it's more about being funny and it's not about pictures and it's not about having to have video editing skills. And right now, it's right now, people are really just enjoying themselves. There's this feature where you can block an account and any other account they ever make, so you can really weed out your trolls really well. And I think folks are so hungry for a positive space that they could just sort of like enjoy. And I do think with the early adoption of journalists who also saw that not jumping on TikTok hurt their careers, they are fast jumping on Threads. And I think that is actually going to be the Twitter killer, is the fact that if we can make this a space where you can search and find news and have reliable sources and also interact with your friends, but also keep all the haters and the folks you don't want to see out, I think it's really going to rival what old Twitter was for journalism.
Interesting. And also, just right before we came on Fox News, there was a guest bad-mouthing Threads. They're already censoring content. Oh, so you can't spew bigotry and deliver misinformation. And that's actually the best. That's the best ad for Threads. It's the same moderating they do with Facebook and Instagram. I'm
going to disable my account right now.
You want to. So Carolina, will you even put your toe into Threads? You're on Instagram. They're the same thing. Just click the button and you have an account.
You know what? I've been thinking about it. I was just talking about it with my husband this morning, and I told him, like, if you do it, I'll do it. Kind of thing where
what did he say?
He said he's not going to do it, but I still think I might. But it's also one of those things where it's like I don't have lots of things to check, and it's kind of in a way looking in the mirror. That's what I like about my Instagram. It's just a fun thing. I post pictures because otherwise they'll get lost forever, and I never get to look back at them. So, but again, do I want to put in all this work to do all this free content and not get paid by advertisers? But who cares?
And there will be no advertisers for 1 year on Threads. And that is part of the joy of it. And that's part of why people are so addicted to it and like it so much right now. TikTok just added advertisers. So now every fourth scroll is an ad. Here, it feels like MySpace. It feels like the space where you could just talk about stuff. It's not about self-promotion. They don't want me to cross-post my TikToks. They're like, no, we just want you to talk to us, V. So it's a very cool place right now.
You know
That's
what?
very
It might
interesting.
be a good idea to just go for until it sucks again.
Yeah,
Until
go for the friends and the fans. People get excited when you come. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you're here! This is great!" It's like going to I don't know, high school prom or something. It's really fun.
I didn't go to prom, but let's not get into that.
This is your chance, Dean.
This is my chance. Instagram. If you look at my Instagram account was just screenshots of my tweets. So this actually, I'm not even kidding. So this is actually, there's like screenshots of tweets, a video from the show, and a random picture here and there. And the worst thing is any picture of me gets the least likes. Like my tweets might get like 200 likes, but a picture of me, like, we're not here for you. We're here for your thoughts and your tweets. So Threads actually gives me that. This is not a commercial for Threads. I'm just saying we're a day in and it seems interesting. And
What
I like
if
I like the moderation. I don't
what if
like
when
the
you
analysis.
post your face, they try to censor it? What are you going to do
Like
then?
that misinformation? Like that's not what he looks like. They should do that on dating apps. This is misinformation. This is what you look like 23 years ago.
I do think it's funny that we're all cheering for Zuck as like the best boy this week. But there's going to be some billionaire that owns all the platforms. And actually the demise of MySpace was because Rupert Murdoch purchased it to shut it down. Yeah, I only learned this fairly recently. Rupert Murdoch and News Corp were the ones who partially bought MySpace enough to essentially destroy it, which is what we see Elon Musk did with Twitter. These spaces where we can hold people accountable are not spaces that those folks necessarily want us to have. So as long as Zuck remains this sort of like, I don't know, happy-go-lucky billionaire for right now, or like still I don't know what it is about him. He's a terrible person. Like,
is that why after Rupert Murdoch bought it, I had a top 8 things I hate about other people?
Yes,
that's a similar thing. Okay.
Yeah, and all rhetorical questions that'll make you just hate your uncles. Yes.
There's all pictures of Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see where Threads goes. Like people are excited now. A lot of it are my friends from Twitter who really I just like Elon Musk on a personal level because what he did, he brought back a neo-Nazi, Andrew Anglin from the Daily Stormer, who had used Twitter to say I was involved in terrorism, I'm Muslim, and that had his Twitter followers and people threatened to kill me. And I sued him, Anglin, and I won a judgment of $4.1 million. But Nazis are really good at hate, but not at bigotry. At bigotry, but not at investing, right? So they're really good at bigotry. So there's no money to collect. But the whole point was to say, you're not going to silence us. Elon Musk let him back on. And I'm like, I can't believe you. So I'm happy that they're going to be a moderation on Facebook. People should have debates that you shouldn't all agree with each other. No one here says we should all agree. You should have conservatives and liberals and everything, but you shouldn't have neo-Nazis and white supremacists and anti-Semites who are openly spewing that garbage, or anti-Muslim hate, anti-LGBT hate. And I think that's what Facebook has done. That's well. And so look, in the cage match, Elon Musk is going to fight Mark Zuckerberg in the cage match. Kevin, who would you, they really are still talking about it. A cage, I'm not even kidding.
They should do it.
So Kevin, who do you think who would you support? And is there a difference between that and who would win?
I would support the referee over either of them. I think it's going to be hard to I think it's going to be hard to hit each other in the face when neither of them can make eye contact. I think that's going to be a very difficult match.
They're both looking down. They're both looking to like
they're
this.
both just
They got it.
They
He's right
just
there.
graze at each other's chest and then just miss.
See, Zuckerberg fighting Elon is like when the Patriots play the Cowboys. I root for injuries. So Carolina, what about you? They might. I'm not sure. They were really talking about it at one point, but now Elon Musk is threatening to sue Zuckerberg for Threads. How dare you copy what I'm doing? Carolina, do you have any sense? Who would you like to win? Is there one or the other?
Well, I mean, this is a very big case of Gen X versus millennial, and Zuck becoming the millennial that we don't necessarily need, but we might deserve at the time. and so here we are. I think if anything, of course, I'm going to root, who am I going to vote for? Who's the lesser of two evils? Zuckerberg, maybe, but then if Elon Musk loses so badly, then he may run for president, and that's going to be horrible. So we're going to have to figure something out in a way that he's just laid down gently into the ground in some way.
He's born in South Africa, so he can't. So what do you say, V?
Speaking of president, though, did you guys see what happened to Don Jr. on Threads when he tried to sign up? So they were running polls on Truth Social saying, "Are you going to go to Threads?" And people are like, "No, I'm never going to go to commie Meta." I was like, "Yeah, communist brother Zuckerberg, of course."
Right.
But so Don Jr. tried to sign up, and in a warning comes up when you go to follow him that says this account has repeatedly posted false information that was reviewed by independent fact checkers or went against our community guidelines. Are you sure you want to follow? And it's like this little warning that comes up.
And he's holding it up. Z's holding it up. That is so great, man. That's what they were complaining about.
That's what they're
Fox News
complaining
thing.
about.
I didn't know. I'm like, yeah, well, that's great. Look, that's Facebook is doing what they're supposed to do. They have to do some moderation. It's not a free for all. We don't, Twitter. I didn't care about the Twitter fights years ago. I used to fight with people on Twitter and stuff.
Sure.
Then I got away from that, but I didn't mind the fighting. It's just really the anti-Semite, the anti-Muslim bigots, the vile, just the worst of the worst, and amplifying them and letting them be on your platform. There's no First Amendment right to be on a private platform. That's up to a company. You should have, it should be a privilege and not extended to the worst. So V, last quick thing, Zuckerberg versus Musk in the cage match. Any sense who do you think would actually win that fight?
I think Zuck's got better tech. I imagine he'd have like some sort of like go-go gadget amount of like things that he could pull out. And one thing that I'll give him is he is over Elon. He at least has original ideas. So he might be able to, strategize a little bit better. There's not much Elon can do.
I will say the twins from the social movie. What was that movie? The
Winklevoss.
The Winklevoss
yes.
twins might contradict it, but I do see Elon showing up like the Iron Man. Like all of a sudden he presses this and it's like all the medals over him. It's like, bring it, Musk. And so let's take a little break and we're going to continue our conversation of what just happened with our friends Carolina, V, and Kevin right after this. And we're back. Ready? And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live here Friday, July 7th, continuing. Carolina Hidalgo, V Spehar, and Kevin Dombrowski joining us. So, Kevin, I got to start with you because you've seen some rough crowds in your day. Lindsey Graham, look, I've seen rough crowds too. I'm a comic. I used to tour the country. I've seen people get booed and stuff. He got booed for 6 straight minutes on stage. I've been called things on stage, but never a traitor like he was. And the worst part was it's 15 miles from where he lives in South Carolina. He represents South Carolina in the Senate, and they booed him all because he's not loyal enough to Trump, which he's really a loyalist now, but it's not loyal enough. So I don't know if you watched the clip or not. If you ever a crowd turn on you, and any sense of how you would win them back if you were helping Lindsey Graham in this scenario?
Yes. I had, oh God, this is years ago, last week. No, this is years ago. I was doing some like corporate, waitering job, and I was sick, and I took like a Dayquil with a 5-hour energy to let my body decide. And I hadn't slept for days. It's like, the whole grind when you're like starting out, right? And I was hosting this show at New York Comedy Club, which is like my home club now. But at the time I was like, trying to get in there. And I encountered an older dude. He was like overalls, suspenders, just like a Mountie guy, overweight, older guy from upstate New York. And he told me where he lived, and I had never heard of it. And I tried to like ask him to explain it. And he was like, you don't know where it is? And I kind of made it weird between us because sometimes you can make it so weird that it'll flip and be silly. And it never flipped. And the entire audience just got uncomfortable. And I bombed worse than I had bombed in years. And I went out into the bar, and all the comics were like trashing me, which is like, how it's like if they're not talking to you, you have problems. But if they are, you're good. So I went back to introduce the next comic, and the crowd wouldn't even look at me. And I had to be like, okay, look, I go, let's just be honest. Sometimes you're good at your job. Sometimes you're bad at your job. What you just saw was pure shit. You know it. I know it. But you're in good hands. I do this professionally. I've been doing this for a long time. Let's actually flip the show around, have a good time. And I go, and besides, whatever you think you're going to do to me is nothing compared to a bar full of professional comics. And it instantly flipped the energy. So what I think Lindsey Graham has to do is go out and say he's completely spineless and has no allegiance to anybody.
Just be honest. Like, I know
100%. Just pull the curtain and go, I'm a puppet, and my string, whoever pulls my string is what I'll say.
Carolina, what Lindsey Graham did to get the crowd back was make a joke, which is on some level smart, but the joke was at the expense of Donald Trump, their beloved. because he literally said to the crowd, he goes, let me tell you about my relationship with Trump. He goes, we have something in common. You know, I grew to like him and he likes himself. So he had that in common. I'm like, wow, you're trying to win the crowd back that doesn't like you by making fun of the guy that they love. I'm like, that's not reading the room. So Carolina, I really enjoyed it, although there's a concerning level to all of the fascism we're seeing. Carolina, what do you think? Have you ever had crowds? You do. I don't know if you still do stand up. You used to do stand up.
Yeah. I mean, not as much. I do mostly podcasting, but still, I have
You ever
encountered
get heckled
tough
on a
crowds.
podcast? Have you ever heckled?
That's the beauty of podcasting,
Okay.
right? Like you get to just throw everything out there and then just ignore the comments if you want to. But obviously when you're doing it on stage, when Lindsey Graham's on stage and he's bombing bad, I love Kevin's idea. I love that because that's what you got to do. You just got to go up there. You got to be like, I'm shit, because this kind the
I'm the
Trump
worst.
crowd.
I discuss myself. Right.
Exactly. No, the Trump crowd is insane. And I know this because growing up millennial and stuff and also even with a lot of Gen Z as well. If you see, if we were able to arm like a Taylor Swift army, that as rabid as they are, or K-pop fans, it is almost the same amount of insaneness as there are towards this kind of crowd, the red, GOP kind of crowd, because they are just rabid. That could be our next civil war. That could be intense.
Taylor Swift versus MAGA.
Yes, exactly. Because it is, in that sense, there's no gray area. It's black and white. If you even say the smallest little thing, and that is actually what ends up being fascism, right? Where you ended up turning on yourself so many times that you're the one who ends up on the guillotine. And that's what we're seeing right now. And this is something that I don't know why everyone's so surprised about, because this is going to happen anytime now, and where the white people turn on themselves, on each other.
The white on white's the worst thing. V, what do you think? And what about the idea of the crowd demanding absolute loyalty to Donald Trump? Not just loyalty, but the absolute, which really we get into the world of one of the traits of fascism and authoritarian movements.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have to figure that since 2015, right, since Trump first ran for president the first time, this crowd has been trained and radicalized to one end, which is to cheer for one man. Absolutely. And the thing that they're addicted to and that they like is that sports fan, religious, Taylor Swift, K-pop energy. So they're not there to be educated. They're not there to hear interesting ideas. They're not here to hear any criticism. They came for a show. And the show that they come for time and time again is who has the most updated merch, who has the craziest sign, who has the loudest cheering. They're coming for that collective energy that makes them feel something. And they're not there to have any of that fragile little glass box that's been built chipped at. It's not going to change. These people are not rabid for the ideals of the Republican Party or for conservative values. They are, rabid for the feedback they get from Trump telling them that they're winning, from other people being losers, from that sort of extremist just vibe that if you've ever been to a political rally or even just like a major sports event, you're not going to stop in the middle and be like, hey, what do you guys really think about men not being allowed to cry? Right? You'd be like, shut up. I'm watching the Bills. I don't want to hear that. Get off this stage. You know what I mean? There's a time for that. So you got to know your audience. And I think Lindsey Graham certainly doesn't. And I think he thought being adjacent to power made him powerful, and it didn't. He's a puppet.
The crowd hated him. It's interesting when people do the analogy to sports about it's like Trump's like a sports team. I'm a Giant fan, but I'm the first one to say they suck, when they do suck, when they're good. I'm the first to badmouth them when things, fire the coach. These guys suck. What kind of running back and that kind of stuff. It's not like it's beyond sports, because if you love a sports team, you're also the first to criticize it. With Trump, it is that kind of fascist cult-esque mentality going on that's deeply alarming.
That's so interesting. We should start to do that. First off, I didn't know men could cry, so thank you for that, B. I also, I'll be doing that directly after closing my laptop.
I love to cry. We can cry together. I'll guide you through it.
Please do. I think that's so interesting because I've always thought it's like when you have a Senate meeting, it's like, what time do the Republicans play the Democrats? And to have the mentality of a sports person, be like, Clinton, December 92, to March 93 was like really peak year. Like that was
Ah.
great. I look at like the 2016 Cavs when LeBron won in Cleveland.
Yep.
You should look at politicians in terms of their term and just split it down to like month and year where they were at their peak.
Well, I don't know where Trump would be in all this, except, look, in the big picture, it's remarkable. The guy is now charged with 71 felonies, and he raised more money in the last quarter. We just found this out yesterday, double the amount that he did the first quarter. Like the more indictments he gets, the more money the GOP base goes.
Of course.
I like this. And the New York Manhattan DA case, okay, that's a little different. You can say, oh, okay, they could play games there. The classified documents is all real. There's pictures and stuff. Like he was just throwing it around. He didn't care. He's showing it off to people. There's no disputing that. They don't care. And that's the cult/fascist movement that we're dealing with. It's deeply, deeply concerning in the bigger picture where we're going. This might be our last election coming up. I mean, that's
these people also don't want to apologize, right? So nobody wants to admit that they're wrong about their candidate or they were wrong about their stance or have to apologize for Trump not being everything that they said he was, because that's like admitting that, your religion isn't real. Like the more that we show that this particular person has lied to people and even try to show them with care that he's lied to you and misled you, the more they double down and dig in. And it's really unfortunate, and it's torn apart a lot of families.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely why it's a cult, because when you're in a cult, the rules do not apply to them, no matter what. There's a society and then there's the cult. And that has always been the case, no matter what. I don't know if they know they're in a cult, but they don't care.
Yeah, they don't. It's remarkable. I'm chatting with Carolina Hidalgo, V Spehar, and Kevin Dombrowski. So this was something on right-wing media for days, including to today. Congressman, the chair of the Oversight Committee, wants an investigation. They found cocaine at the White House. It was on Wednesday. It was confirmed that a small amount of cocaine was found in a cubby area for storing electronics in the West Executive basement entranceway, where they said many have authorized access, including staff and visitors coming on West Wing tours. So, which really begs the question, who is so irresponsible to bring cocaine to the White House, but then responsible enough to check it when they were going in? They're like, oh, that's where you put electronics and cocaine. They put it there. So, and of course, on the right, they're like, it's Hunter Biden's. And on the left, we're saying it's Donald Trump Jr.'s. They finally found it. So I don't know where it is, but Kevin, any insight into this one at all? The idea of whose cocaine is it? Does it need an investigation? And are there other drugs going on in the White House? Or is this just like, is the Upper White House just selling drugs to make a little more money for us?
Sure. I think this really gets into the whole anthrax scare of the early 2000s. I don't think it was actually anthrax. I think that there was just an excess of cocaine everywhere, and this was just left over from the party. No, it doesn't surprise me at all. If you go, there was drugs found in a place of power. You go, that's crazy. Get out of here. Really? And how do I go on that tour? I think it's interesting that it's news. It's so funny to me because I feel like we go through phases where it's like the government is completely transparent sometimes and then completely hidden sometimes. And so like to have a news story about there being cocaine in the White House, it's like a news story about Tom Brady and Kim Kardashian. It's like, who cares about any of this? We assumed that all of this is going on anyway. I would also love to watch a buddy cop movie with Hunter Biden and Don Jr. I think that would be absolutely hysterical.
The faster you have to slow down the speed of the video just so you can understand what they're saying. So V, I mean, look, they call Joe Biden Sleepy Joe. I don't care if Joe Biden wanted to do cocaine to be more alert as president so he could work 15 hours a day. I honestly would not care. I'm like, if it's safe, if his doctor said, hey, a little cocaine.
No, that's the most important part.
I'm like, okay, you want to call him Sleepy Joe? We're giving him cocaine. Boom, there goes Sleepy Joe. I honestly, if his doctor said it's the right thing, because the cocaine used to be legal and it was used medicinally, I wouldn't care. I'm like, okay, fine. What do you think, V?
My initial thought was like, cocaine in this economy, we are paying these people too much. We're paying them way too much if you're getting pure rock out there, like, and then leaving it around. Like, who was in charge of this? So I think it's a silly story. I think it's an interesting, fun human story, and we're getting more and more of those from the Biden administration. I mean, if this was a reality show, you couldn't write this. Like, just the amount of things that Biden has dealt with, the amount of embarrassment he's dealt with on many different issues, and this just being another one. I mean, most recently, him falling at the Air Force graduation and him like popping up and being like, like, I don't know. I love him. I love him. He's
That's
he's
a
a
sign
he's
of
a silly
cocaine
little
use, though.
grandpa. Yeah, he's amazing. So in those ways, and so I think it's an interesting story. I think it gives us a break from being so hateful to kind of have something to laugh at or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I think finding drugs in the White House is not surprising. Other than the fact that, like, you know, I don't know, you think you'd be accountable for your property. That's like rule number one of politics in the military.
Somebody check their cocaine going into
Yeah.
the White House. That's what they're like. Oh, okay, my phone is my cocaine. So, Carolina, what if, taking a page from Kevin, what if Joe Biden goes on TV, puts on the sunglasses, goes, "It was my coke, suckers." You know, so what? It wasn't Hunter's. It was mine. That's why I do this job. I'm 150 years old and
Yeah.
I'm president. You need some coke. I'd be like, that's the coolest guy ever. I'm voting for him twice.
I don't know. To me, I'm like, that's so 2008. I prefer my president to microdose on mushrooms. It's a healthier
That's true.
alternative. You know, that kind of thing. Obviously, there was someone who probably partied all night and was like, "Oh crap, I got coke. I don't want to be caught with coke in my pocket, so I'm just gonna like kind of get rid of it." I'm not saying I know from personal experience, but that's kind of what it sounds like. And who cares? It's what I mean. We've all seen Veep. It's what Washington is built on. The pillars
That's
of cocaine. Let them have it. But yes, I say plant-based drugs are the best way to go.
Carolina, I think you're onto something there, because I've been on White House tours a number of times and they do not let you go to the bathroom. So if you were holding cocaine on you, you might stick it in the cubby because you could not flush it. They don't let you leave their site. So I think you're probably right.
And that's also interesting. The person, whoever dropped it off, goes, "Okay, I'll leave my cocaine in the White House. They'll never figure out it was me." Like, they don't have the technology in the White House to figure out that person's the one that dropped it off. What fingerprints, the whatever eye scan.
Now,
Marco-
Dean, I have a just a counter question. Would you, because you're like, if Biden were doing it, I think he's the coolest. If Trump got caught with cocaine, would that be a news story on your show, or would you be like, I get it, he's president?
It's like, if Trump was on cocaine, it would be the least offensive thing about him, because
fair.
he's just so bad. He's just so
Fair.
bad. And so many.
Fair,
Like,
but would you
he's on
categorize
coke.
it
I
as
don't
that?
care. To me, it wouldn't even be a story. I'm like, I don't care if he does drugs. I really don't care. I care that everything else about Donald Trump, like the coup attempt.
Would you say
January 6th,
would you say
banning
that's
Muslims.
why we finally have an answer for everything? Is that what you would say?
Maybe. Well, he did. Well, the whole rumor was he's on some kind of Adderall or something.
Right.
that's got him. By the way, the mushrooms thing, when did that become big? Because I do comedy a couple of days a week, and the younger comics are all talking about mushrooms. I'm like, I hate mushrooms. They're like, "Oh, it's not that kind of mushroom." I'm like mushroom sauce on chicken. My mom used to make me eat it. I hated it. And now it's like, is it illegal? They all have bags of mushrooms.
Yeah, no, I mean, we got some. I mean, I don't really take it because I got stomach problems anyways, but like where I
Is it
am in
legal?
LA, it is, I don't know, but we buy them online from Canada and it feels legal. But here in LA, there's like they call the California sober, where you don't drink alcohol, or maybe you just sip on a beer from time to time, and you partake in, well, marijuana is legal here, and then you partake in microdosing on a mushroom. So you know, you go to a festival, you're out all day in the hot sun, you just have a mushroom instead of drinking beers all day. It's kind of a healthier alternative. It's kind of what it doesn't seem like a bad idea. If your stomach can handle it, I say go for it.
Oh, it's bad for the stomach, which is not good for me.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like, that's, you know, it's getting older. I
it's
can't take
interesting.
that anymore.
If you can buy from Canada, maybe Tim Hortons will become a dispenser, because Tim Hortons is the chain from Canada.
Yeah.
You should try that
Mediocre
this weekend.
donuts.
Try that this weekend on stage.
I'm gonna go to Tim
I'll
Hortons
run
on
up there.
42nd Street.
Yeah.
There's a Tim Hortons in Times Square. I'm gonna go like, "Do you guys have the mushrooms? Because I can buy them online."
What else is in the news? You guys hear about this?
This is all right. So let's do something in the last minute here. Something not political at all. Summer sizzle or fizzle with the movies. They're down 21% from pre-COVID. They're up from last year, but they're down 21% from pre-COVID. And the debate is it the movie's not good enough, or are people just changed their habits where, unless it's a huge movie, they're just not going to go? So V, let's start with you. What's your sense?
I think it's still a little bit of like pandemic hangover type thing, because audiences in general, and I'm sure you guys see this being on stage. My wife is on tour of Hadestown, and she says even theater audiences don't totally know how to behave yet. It's
Wow.
like we got so used to being in our house and just watching things on our TV. So even live theater, people are kind of sitting there like a live theater, being on their phones or different goofy stuff. So I think that's kind of what it is. The experience of like watching a movie in a crowded movie theater, paying all of this money. Folks are like, it'll come out in a couple of weeks and I'll watch it on the big screen TV I bought during the pandemic in my little oasis I've created in my home. And I think that's more it than that the movies just aren't good.
It's interesting. I resonates. Although I'll say stand up, the clubs are, at least in New York, I should say, are doing pretty well.
That's
so
good.
people are out, but they're choosing theaters not doing as well, especially
Mhm.
off Broadway, like the big shows. Yeah. But even some of the bigger theater shows, Phantom and some of the others that have been around forever have closed now because they couldn't survive post-COVID. Kevin, what do you think? Have you been, let me just say, have you been to the movies recently at all?
Yeah, I've
Oh.
been a couple times. It's hard. I mean, my wife and I have a 2-year-old, so it's really hard to get out and do anything. Period. I'm gonna side with V on this, but I'm gonna take it from the industry perspective. I don't think it's a fear of going out. I think there was a lack of being able to be creative. Sure, there was a lot of writing happening, but the whole process of industry and entertainment as a whole shut down. And I know for stand up, it took at least 6 to 8 months after the official quote unquote reopen, when Biden gave his State of the Union, was like, it's time for people to fill downtowns. It took about 6 to 8 more months for crowds to really start to feel pre-pandemic. And right now with stand up, they're great crowds. They're not easily offended. So it's actually pre-pandemic, which is a really fun time to do comedy. But I do think there's an industry lag that we're now dealing with. It's like when you catch the former president's economy. It's a similar thing where we're now seeing the wave of like the lack of being able to be creative and entertain catch up to us. So I think there's just a lag. I think it'll pick back up, and then I think we'll see the effects of the writer's strike probably next year.
Yeah, that's true. Carolina, what about you? Last thing, do you go to movies much, you and your husband, or?
No, not
Very
really.
well.
I used to go all the time, but now the whole, they don't enforce the rules so much. You can just watch it at home. It's more comfortable, that whole thing. And maybe the summer blockbuster is over. It started around Jaws, Star Wars time, and then ended around Avengers Endgame. So it's like rock and roll. Maybe it just lasts 50 years. And then we just got to find a new thing.
And Carolina did a whole
no big
podcast on movies for a long time. So it's interesting. You're right about that. So before we run out of time here, where can people follow you and find out more about your work? V, let's start with you.
So I'm at Under the Desk News on TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. And I have a podcast called the V Interesting Podcast. We do it every Friday. It's 4 stories you wouldn't have heard anywhere else and an interview that helps you be smarter.
That's great. That's very good. And Carolina, what about you, my friend?
Carolina Hidalgo on Instagram and maybe on Threads now. You never know.
Come on.
You can
Come
check
on
out
over.
my stuff on there. And of course, No Dogs in Space on Last Podcast Network. We're doing a lot of experimental German music stuff. It's really fun. It's about the sons and daughters of Nazis and how much they rejected their parents' culture and decided to make their own music. It's fantastic.
Perfect setup for Kevin Dombrowski. Kevin? No.
I am on all my social media at Insurrection. At Kevin Dombrowski. It's just there's comedy on some of them and not on the others. If you just type in my name, I'll pop up on there. I did have a podcast called Just Joking. I just wrapped up the series officially.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did. I wrapped up the series. It was fun. It ran its course. I got really tired of booking it and just looking for new projects. So I am focusing on the album coming out. It's called Stay at Home Kevin. It's a direct sequel to High on Molly, which was my first album. My wife's name is Molly. I also do drugs. And then come see me. I'm in the city a lot, but I'm just starting to hit the road. So kevindombrowski.com for all my tour dates.
Check Kevin out at January6rules.com. So, V, Carolina, and Kevin, it was so great having you on. I so appreciate it.